Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon Lingle, and this is Spirit of Invincibility, a podcast by We Are Invincible, where we explore what it really means to turn the invisible into the invincible. Before we get started, this episode is especially meaningful because it's the first time We Are Invincible's co-founder, Lauren Ruotolo, joins me as co-host. Lauren's voice, perspective, and leadership are foundational to We Are Invincible, and I couldn't imagine a better conversation for us to begin this next chapter together. Today, we're joined by Yar Khan, an international disability rights advocate, former advisor to the U.S. Department of State, and a global force for inclusion. Cara has worked across more than a dozen countries, advised world leaders, and continues to challenge how power, access, and visibility show up in our world. She's here because Cara doesn't just talk about invincibility. She interrogates it. With honesty, intellect, and vulnerability, she reminds us that strength isn't always physical, and that being disabled is not the same as being diminished. This conversation is thoughtful, fierce, and deeply human. Let's get into it.
Well, I am so excited. The first time I was here, I was actually a guest on the podcast. So now that I officially joined as co host of the show and as our first guest together, really excited to introduce a friend of mine, Cara. Welcome, Cara, to the show. So excited to talk to you. You are not only a friend, but an international disability activist. I'll call you a movie star. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Thank you both for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I would say the past 25 years has been a mad rush, a delicious international mad rush. I started my career with the United Nations, and that took me immediately abroad from Canada, where I grew up, to Ecuador, and then had the privilege between then and now to have lived in 11 different countries, working mostly with the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. And then here in the United States, after years of advocating locally and working with UNICEF, I had the privilege of being a White House political appointee to serve in the U.S. Department of State as a senior advisor on international disability rights. Today, I have a boutique consulting firm here in New York City, and I work with clients all over the world. Anything from impact investing to doing public speaking and moderating, which seems to be one of my favorite jams.
That's amazing. So tell us about some of your latest projects.
Well, Facing the Falls is a film that came out last summer. This is a short documentary film directed by Celia Anaskovich, produced by Liz Yell-Marsh, and executive produced by Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton. It's a 34-minute short documentary film that follows me and a large expedition crew through the Grand Canyon. First 4 days on horseback on a wild Mustang to cross the Grand Canyon from rim to rim, and then 8 days whitewater rafting the Colorado River, which is the lifeline to the West. Not everything went as planned, but you'll have to watch the film to get all of the juicy stories out of that one. It is available for free on YouTube in multiple accessible formats. And if you're flying Delta Airlines for the next 4 months, it is available worldwide on their in-flight entertainment system.
Passenger we have on board this morning, I want to recognize Cara Elizabeth Yar Khan. She stars in a powerful documentary called Facing the Falls, which is playing on Delta's infotainment system in the back of your seats. The film follows Cara as she takes on a remarkable 12-day journey through the Grand Canyon on horseback and river raft, despite living with a rare progressive muscle wasting condition. Her journey isn't just about talking about the physical challenge. It's also a motivational journey to encourage people, even with disabilities, to live life. It's an inspiring story, and I encourage everybody who does not have a pre-planned movie to watch to enjoy the documentary about Cara and her heroic adventure in the Grand Canyon. So thank you very much for joining us today, Cara. And to everyone traveling with us this morning, thank you for joining us on Delta Airlines. Welcome aboard.
I saw the other day that you were flying on Delta and you were watching somebody watch you. What was that feeling like?
It was exhilarating. It was one of those, is this really happening? Because it's one thing to be in an organized screening where I'm prepared for the attention or the performance that comes when you're doing an event. It's very different when you're in your personal time or your personal space, and to have that part of my life just show up. And then on top of it, the person was informed afterwards who I was. And then to have them turn around and fangirl, for lack of a better word, was really humbling, a little embarrassing, but so special. Because it means that someone can enjoy or take with them a message that otherwise might not reach them. So I was very grateful for the partnership with Delta is allowing for people to see people with disabilities in particular in an action adventure movie.
Getting down and dirty with the whole adventure too. I'm a big fan of the documentary. Watching your experience, I myself have not explored the Grand Canyon. So just seeing how you navigated on horseback and rafting. I mean, the river was not calm by any and you handled it like a pro. It was incredible to see your adventure. What were some of the feelings that you felt as you were descending?
I will say that the river part was much easier than the horseback riding part. And first and foremost, not only because I was exhausted before we even got started, before we actually took off on the Grand Canyon, the South Rim on April 12th, 2018. So this is 7 years ago we filmed that. It was 4 years before that of coming up with the idea, training to learn to ride horseback as my body was progressively deteriorating and I was losing muscle mass and losing certain physical functions, but also to raise all the money and raise awareness about this important advocacy project. And I think I went into it quite naively in that, I've been advocating and public speaking and fundraising my entire career. I've got this. No, yes, I've got this. But it definitely wasn't an invincible feeling that I was feeling going down the Grand Canyon. A lot of the unexpected twists that show up in real time, I think, is what made it fearful and daring and scary and unsure. At the same time, there was an enormous amount of confidence and trust in the professional team that I had brought along with me. So there was a release, let's say, of needing to be the usual on top of everything A-type personality control freak that I am in my day-to-day, and having faith in others who are around me and faith in the passion and purpose of the project. So a lot of release as much as there was physically gripping on to the reins and the saddle for dear life.
That's incredible. When I want to ask you a question, when you met the person on the plane, what was their reaction? Did they want to talk about more about your adventure or more about your disability?
Neither. There wasn't time. As in when you're deplaning, people want to grab their stuff and go. The gentleman was quite gracious. He was also much older. So this is something quite unique. I find that, and I say much older, the gentleman appeared to be early 70s. And his response was, your story is very inspiring, which that word gives us, makes our tongues curl in the disability community, but he meant it as a compliment. He did mean it as a compliment, and I received it as such. And I think, again, whether he had the words or not, I know that seeing someone like me, biracial South Asian woman who has a physical disability and a progressive chronic illness, would stay with him and at least make him think for a few moments. So I find that not always the words that come out of people's mouths when they want to reflect on the film are the whole picture of maybe how the film, and not hopefully just me, but everyone else who's in the film, has impacted them.
Right. I think that when you are disabled, I look at it similar to how where, we can just walk down the street. We both live in New York City, and people believe that I may walk, you may wheel, whatever our mode of transportation is. And that's just an inspiration just by going outside. Well, to me, it's not. It's just living my life, right? Just like anybody can walk down the street and people are just like, you're such an inspiration. Well, no, we're just living our lives.
And I think to their credit, they don't know any different because they don't know about our lives. They didn't grow up seeing persons with disabilities having the same access to opportunity and engaging the same way. When I grew up, when I was in high school dancing in clubs every Friday, Saturday night with my girlfriends, I didn't see young women my age with crutches or leg braces or wheelchairs dancing in the club. That would have been awesome. But we didn't see that. So later on in my life as an adult, before I joined this wonderful community, if I'd seen someone in the club, I myself probably would have been like, wow. I think it's partially an acknowledgement that it took a lot of effort to get there. I know if I was to go out to a club, I'd be wanting a sassy outfit. There'd be getting into the club, dealing with all the stares. There is an effort that goes to putting yourself out in the public sphere the same way everyone else does because of the stigma and discrimination, but also just, non-mean curiosity that comes with that. And again, because they don't know any different, they think, wow, for me, how would I feel being stared at just as I'm staring at this person? So I get it. I would love to change it where we're not seen as inspirational. We're just respected and I get a good morning and a nod like everyone else.
That's why Brandon and I started We Are Invincible, is to tell the stories of the people and not, of the patients, which is really what a lot of times what we're looked at is of our disease or whatever, medical issue we may have and not of the person of who we are. That's why we want to know what makes you, Cara. What makes you every day?
My reputation at the State Department was fierce and fancy. And I really like that one.
I love that.
Fierce, fancy, and 50. I am someone that people know to do what they say they're going to do. That was the greatest compliment I got after coming out of the Grand Canyon and making the movie. People say, wow, you really did it, which to me was surprising because I said I was going to do it. So I'm grateful that I have that reputation. I am fiercely passionate, as I hope to be fiercely intelligently passionate about my advocacy work. I try to back up what I do, not just with a lot of rah-rah, but with data, lived experience, and reference to other advocates and organizations that are doing important work. My close friends know me as to be someone full of sass. And I have a pretty foul mouth, especially in Spanish, but I also have the diplomacy and diplomatic side of myself who knows how to behave in public settings and with the right people. But I think that is just testament to a really diverse person with a lot of lived experience in so many countries. I speak 6 different languages. I am multicultural and biracial myself, having grown up with an Indian Muslim father, an English Christian mother, and a Chinese Buddhist stepmom. We speak English at home that's mixed with words in Urdu and Mandarin Chinese. We celebrate Chinese New Year, Eid, and Christmas, and of course my birthday, the best day in the world. So with that is someone who celebrates diversity, someone who loves to have fun, is fiercely devoted to their friends and family, being incredibly loyal. I'm a Scorpio through and through. But also someone who understands that our lifetime is fleeting. We will all die. I'm very comfortable. I have a level of acceptance around death that comes, one, from losing my mother at a young age, but also just being cognizant of how other people's lives are impacted either by war, natural disasters, poverty. And that's part of learned from the work that I've done around the world with the United Nations.
What did you bring into the United Nations that maybe you didn't see before, given there's not a lot of people in the world who have Cara E. Yar Khan's experiences, especially with the nationalities that you've experienced, the languages that you've experienced, the cultures that I can't even begin to touch on. So what was it about your lived experience that you brought into the United Nations?
I would definitely say in the UN community and the international diplomacy community, I am not unique. Everybody speaks multiple languages, has traveled around the world, especially once they've begun their career. Everyone is brilliant. It was only when I moved to the United States that I felt a bit like a strange bird. And when I stepped out of the international development scene, that it felt like my experiences were quite different. I will say the unique value that I brought was, one, the curiosity to speak to strangers, and 2, why not ask? The worst thing someone could say is no. That served me enormously well in private sector fundraising, which was new and nascent at the time when I joined the UN. And I come up with really big, grand ideas. I have a visual way of learning and a visual mindset, and I come up with a big idea, and then I can also match that with scurrying behind the scenes to do all of the really detail-oriented work to make something happen. I have an approach to risk that I think is unique as well, in that I can be afraid of something and still try. I live that balance of fear and courage, which allows me to try new things, but also has a good check in place to think about, maybe not always is this dangerous, but who should I bring along for the ride, for the project, in order to make sure we have the best people. I will say something that was quite unique is I don't, at least back in the, when I joined in the early 2000s and was in the 90s studying international development, I'm a girly girl. I'm a princess. I have a tattoo that says princess. I like tiaras and sequins and sparkles and makeup and fancy clothes, all, the finer things. That wasn't the look of a development worker when I joined. And I struggled because people don't take you seriously if you're considered pretty or if you are a bubbly person. I've had to prove my intelligence, prove my worth, prove that I have something to contribute and that I do belong in spaces, particularly in the international disability space. My disability actually helped me a lot. As much as some people might have stigmatized or wondered, is she the diversity guy, or does she really have something to contribute? It helped chip away at the insecurity or discrimination stigma that people might have felt because of the way I look. Yes, sure, I'm on the makeup every day, but the fact that I have black eyes and green hair, which people think is pretty, I didn't do anything to earn that. These are gifts from my parents. But that was a reality of something that was, not a big trial and tribulation, but it definitely was a wake-up call that I'd have to prove myself and my intelligence and that I deserve to be there.
So what makes you invincible?
To be honest, the word made me really uncomfortable when I heard it, because I was like, I don't want to be perceived as a superhero or as superhuman. And I think the word invincible, people automatically might think of that. At least I did. So I went and looked it up. And the definition that I read was, invincible means to be too powerful to be defeated or overcome. With that definition in mind, being invincible to me means bringing myself as someone who is physically fragile as a result of this chronic illness and physical disability, and who in their post-traumatic wisdom going into my 50th year is also emotionally fragile, with bringing all of that as I am still learning and becoming and drawing strength from both of those very real scenarios in my life. Where I am invincible is in my psychology, in the mental resilience and strength that I have cultivated, curated over the past 49 years to be true to the expectations I set for myself in life, the ambitions I set for myself, the goals and the self-worth that I celebrate and practice. Now, I didn't have all of these invincible characteristics growing up, absolutely not. And even throughout my 20s and 30s and 40s, they were I would definitely probably would not have described myself as psychologically, mentally invincible as I am today. But they were there in some part. It's part of my personality, someone who is able to, I don't know, overcome is the right word, but definitely take adversity head on and work through it and put the work into working through it. It isn't just the ta-da that all of a sudden we can tie a bow around it. I am now wise. No, it's a lot of reflection. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of humility. And learning from others, having the privilege and the honor and delight of being in the presence of others who I would describe as invincible in whatever way that may be defined for them.
Seriously.
I loved it.
Go ahead, Laura.
I want to cry. That was beautiful. And I think that that's more invincibility. It's like you're grown up, right? You've grown in ways that you've learned things about yourself, you've learned from others, and you're still growing. Being 50 is kind of like a mark I think like we all make this mark, and I too am going to be 50. But you look at it like you've earned your place in this world, and you've learned, and I've learned from you so much. We need more people like you in this world.
That is very high praise. I think it's a necessity for me, at least, having a chronic illness and a progressive disability, and that I am currently onset quadriplegic or quadriplegic, who will become tetraplegic, which is severe incapacity of arms, leg, and neck. My condition leads to severe incapacity. I need the mental fortitude or the mental invincibility that is still growing within me, not because I fear losing myself. I fear losing my place in the world. I'm going through a very interesting time in my life where I am having conversations that I describe as fragile confessions of a strong woman, in which I am admitting that now I realize I am emotionally connected to what is happening to me. And when I have moments where I'm afraid that I might be physically hurt, or I am mentally exhausted because of having to deal with ignorance in an airport where someone is denying me my legal rights to assistance, I will cry. My body, my body is exhausted. My mind is exhausted from a professional stance of what have I been working hard for, still dealing with this basic crap. And two, the emotional and physical bandwidth that is limited on a daily basis. And so what I am trying to do is work through this emotional fragility to be able to use it almost like a wave that can carry me rather than one that crashes me. I don't have the luxury to be crashed. If I need to crash in moments of it, that is very welcome. I think it's important. I don't need to be invincible in terms of not letting that bring me down at times, because then like a phoenix rising, as Scorpios do, rising from the ashes, I will grow and be stronger every time. While I can have that understanding, as can many other people who face adversity of any kind, the general world is not forgiving, does not offer me that same grace and patience and kindness and understanding, compassion and empathy. And my response to that is, this is why it's so important that I am out and about in my wheelchair boogieing in the club. This is why it's so important that organizations, airlines, hotels, anywhere that could screen Facing the Falls is screening the movie. We need to change the narrative. And the only way to change the mindset and then the knowledge and then hopefully the behavior of society, of individuals, of companies, of organizations, of employers, is that they learn that they themselves will have these adverse moments in their life. They themselves will, at some point, for some period of time, be physically fragile and emotionally fragile, and that this is part of the human experience. What we need to see change is the culture. That I don't have to fear that I will lose my place in the world because I am championing all of this adversity and still pursuing my dreams, and still coming up with new ambition, and that I'm fully confident that my contribution to the world is not yet done. I'm disabled. I'm not dead. So my work now is to try to get everybody else on board.
That's right. That is exactly right. I love how you said it just so plainly. I'm disabled. I am not dead. I think about where disability has been my entire life, and it's been nowhere visible. That's why I am doing this. People ask me, so why'd you launch We Are Invincible? What's your tie to disability? And I was like, well, the fact that it hasn't been in my life. Growing up, grade school, not in the same classroom as children needing just different learning techniques than I need. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about learning techniques. Able-bodied, disabled, everybody can learn different techniques. And so hearing you say this about the community around you, just as you're trying to navigate everyday life, what makes you an innovator?
I'm constantly having to figure out how to navigate a situation, whether it's a curb cut gone wrong, being late and having to navigate really slow pedestrians, or to dealing with someone's uncomfortable feelings or stares in my presence. So you're constantly innovating a solution, right? People with disabilities, our community is known for this, for being so innovative, because we live in worlds that aren't built for us. We live in cultures that don't see us as equals, or that our lives have equal value to people who are non-disabled. And so the innovation for me is a combination of what does the world need, or what is the spaces that I'm going into need, and what is it that excites me, that keeps me intellectually stimulated, that takes the diminishing energy that I have every day, whether it's mental energy or physical energy, to do something exciting and fun. And that is a practice. That is a sense of accountability and responsibility that I wake up with every day. So I also think in certain segments of my work, I want to see change. So rather than just complaining about the problems, let's say even financing or funding for disability work, whether it's rights work, justice, advocacy, services, I'm always thinking of what are the innovative ways in which we can generate resources. And right now, a big part of my life is looking at how does private equity and different financial mechanisms that have been used in the past, how can it fund this work? I think that innovation shows up in different ways. Another example that's very personal, I use approximately 11 assistive aids devices in my day-to-day to look this fabulous, to be this fabulous. But I love to cook. It is my creative outlet. I cannot play piano anymore. Maybe one day I'll take singing lessons. But I love to cook. I love to create recipes. I love to cook food. I love to serve food and share it with people I love. Well, my fingers are atrophied. And so I'm thinking, what are the innovative ways of which I have the chopping board on my lap, and how am I to raise this arm to stir that pot? But what are some of the assistive devices or innovative ways that I may need to adapt so that I can enjoy that love of cooking, art of cooking, that creative outlet for a little bit longer? So I think innovation shows up in my world in a lot of different ways.
We talk about data.
Yeah.
You had to put in metrics 1 to 10. How much time would you get back if you didn't have to innovate in the way that you cognitively have to every day?
100%.
Bam.
Let's think
Absolutely.
about this. I would probably sleep half of what I sleep. So to me, to feel alert and energized in the morning, I need 9 hours sleep. One, I have a very intense work day, but physically my body has to recover. I have a lot less muscle mass that I'm working with, and I don't have the same access to exercise and other things that people can do that help them, have a really good sleep, but also for their body to rejuvenate, or enough resources to be able to go get a massage on a weekly basis, which is a great way to manage pain. So there's sleep, pain management, that can often take up a lot of your time. And then the resources that I need to, say, get dressed and get ready in the morning. I have a personal assistant who I can only afford, because I pay out of pocket, to come 2 hours every morning. So I might wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock and be online until 7 answering emails, being on a conference call, writing the next keynote. Then I need to take out a 2-hour block, not only to get dressed, do my hair and this and that, but potentially do food prep, this needs to go into the laundry, to take care of the cat. So that's a 2-hour block right there. And then throughout the day, there are small things, and I'll give you a TMI moment. Like if I need to go to the restroom between meetings, that's not a let me pop out for 30 seconds, 60 seconds to go to the loo. No, I need a solid 15-minute break, because I don't know if I'm going to stumble when I'm transferring to go to the bathroom. So I would probably be able to do double. Gosh, could you imagine what I could do? Now, it's not to say that always quantity is more than quality, but I definitely use an enormous amount of time throughout my day to mitigate the time that I use for pain management, getting ready, managing a household, thinking. I'm always having to think 10 steps ahead, because they don't have the personal assistant around all the time. And even if she was around all the time, there are things that she just can't do that I have to manage myself.
And I think that's something people forget, is that when you are disabled, you're innovating from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
Oh yeah.
And you're even dreaming about how you're going to innovate the next day and the next day and the day after that. It's
I
like,
woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning with one of my legs having fallen off the bed, stuck on the wheelchair. And I was like, oh, dear Lord. I put the electric bed up, couldn't sit up, got out the straps, had to turn on the lights. It was so disruptive to the sleep. And this, like, it's small, intimate things like that to getting into an event where nothing is accessible. I can't reach any of the food or the drink. They want me to speak on stage. Oh, we don't have a ramp. So now I'm speaking from the floor. Like, there's constant ways in which you're needing to innovate. And you would win back the time by just not being frustrated, having to always pre-plan all of the obstacles that you anticipate you're going to face in your day.
but
Having said that, and all of that complaining, it gives me more ammunition. One, the fierce thing, to keep the fierce up, right? To be able to advocate more fiercely, intellectually, passionately about breaking down barriers so that other people with disabilities don't have to face as many obstacles. And also, it gives me more of an understanding and insight to people who struggle in the same ways I do, or in similar ways. I want to make a really important point about struggling, at least how it shows up in my life. I struggle every single day, but I do not suffer. I use suffering as my barometer as to, okay, if I'm suffering in this moment, this means I need to introduce a new assistive aid, or I need to hand this task over to my assistant, or I really need to step back and think, how am I going to mitigate a situation? And that could even be, I'm going to need more personal assistant for a particular month, so I've got to take on an extra contract to be able to cover those expenses. You know, this disability squeeze, the enormous cost of living with a chronic illness and a disability, because we live in a country that doesn't have universal healthcare. And even if it did have universal healthcare, it might not cover all of the expenses. But that tension between suffering and struggling is an important one I always like to make.
what I loved is, above all the sufferings, is that you get up, you look beautiful, you are that girly girl, you don't show people you're suffering, and you are Cara the person, not Cara the disabled person at the end of the day. Because you are just Cara, right? And you're living your life and you're successful and you've made a huge name for yourself. And I mean, to me, you're like the dream person that others would want to be in this world. And the fact that you suffer, you don't show that. And I think that that is also what makes you invincible, is that you don't show that suffering to others. And I think that that's what so much of our community doesn't do. We don't show our suffering to others. We suffer in silence a lot of times because it's not worth it. It's just who we are, right? We learn to get through it every day. And that's what We Are Invincible wants to show the world, that we are people. We are people above our disability, and our disability is actually what makes us stronger and what makes us invincible.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are single stories, right?
Right.
I actually love it when people say, oh my God, I forgot you have a wheelchair. Sorry, let me check if it's accessible. Excellent, right? You know, they're just thinking, my fun and sassy friend Cara is coming out, you know, with us tonight. Obviously, it's gorgeous when people remember, oh, let's make sure that it's accessible. And most of people always do. But I don't chastise someone because they're like, oh yeah, I forgot the wheelchair. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I will say though, in terms of, you know, struggle, I think there is value in people seeing the struggle. In terms of suffering, those are moments that I haven't yet processed. And I don't feel that it's valuable to put my suffering out into the open until I've had the opportunity to understand it myself. For me personally, I think it can be dangerous when we just put out suffering into the world. One, it can be very triggering for others, and we don't know if they have the support or the coping mechanisms that they might need to process suffering. For me, I have a lot of coping mechanisms and a lot of insight and support that allows me to process that suffering. And once I've developed the wisdom around that moment and found whether it was the assistive aid or the tactic to pass on that activity to my assistant or to someone else, I'm happy to talk about it, but from a place of reflection and comfort, not from a place of desperation or sharing for the sake of grabbing people's attention. I also don't want to put other people at risk. And I don't know that it adds much value in terms of helping people understand that we also have strength. I'm really tired of the association or the people convoluting weakness and vulnerability with disability. I don't think people with disabilities are inherently weak, even though I am physically fragile and emotionally fragile. That's not maybe physically weak, but it is a sign of strength. Yep. And I do not believe that people with disabilities are inherently vulnerable. We live in vulnerable situations and are put into vulnerable situations, but that's not because of who we are inherently as human beings.
Right.
There's a need for our world in general to become less reactionary. And I love that you really designated those differences of reactionary and from a place of reflection. Because I feel that we are in a place of needing to do some deep reflection and needing to step into a time where we are thinking about issues for people and what they might need to make their lives a little bit easier. Being prepared, looking at the needs of people who exist, period, and saying, okay, let's improve that. Let's improve that. Let's go there.
One of the ways that I can best contribute to the needs of others is worrying about myself. There is a beautiful social media video of a little girl who's doing her buttons or something, and her parent or the adult wants to help her, and she goes, you worry about yourself. And I think just that, if I worry about myself and do the work for myself and then set the example for others and have the courage and the generosity to share how I struggled, how I maybe suffered, but have come out of it. That lesson, I hope, is the offering that can help others versus me knowing what's right for them, because I don't. I really can only know what's right for me. And this goes to the very true fact that my lived experience with disability and chronic illness is unique to me. There are 200 other people in the United States, that is known, who live with HIBM, hereditary inclusion body myopathy, but all of us have a completely unique diagnosis experience, prognosis, day-to-day living, cultural situation, economic standing, level of education, engagement in society. Where we live often determines if we get to be included or if we're excluded. So I think that's, again, another reason why we need to worry about ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah, because we're all unique individuals.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think one-size-fits-all solution that corporations or organizations might want to put out there, be like, yep, we're done, checkbox done.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
All right, Cara. So we've talked about your feeling of invincibility, obstacles in your life that you've overcome, and people who, community, friends, help you in your everyday, but mostly you saying, I am me, and this is what I can do. Tell us somebody who you know or who you've had experience with who's invincible.
According to that definition of being too powerful to be defeated is Judy Heumann, who's the mother of the disability rights movement, who we tragically and unexpectedly lost a couple of years ago. Judy, throughout her life, was advocating against forces where people didn't believe in her, what they were doing. She didn't even have legal rights when she started her advocacy work, and she doesn't take no for an answer. I had the privilege of meeting her many years ago through my career when I was still with the United Nations, actually here in New York. I had come for the UN Conference of State Parties, which on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And I begged my boss at UNICEF to take me to the meeting with Judy Heumann. I still have her card, actually, that she gave to me that day. She was inspiring. And people with disabilities can be inspiring, even though we don't like that word. But it wasn't because she was in a wheelchair. It was because Judy was fierce. She didn't take no for an answer. She demanded that people sit up and pay attention. And as a result of her work and that of many other advocates of her generation and those who followed her and who she brought up in the movement, we have the rights and the protections that we all enjoy today. And even now, because I have this progressive condition, I think of Judy often when I'm in an ableist moment. If I'm feeling embarrassed about something, about my body or something that I'm needing to do, I always think of Judy. I think Judy had to do that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, no big deal. It really helps me. It also helps me. I really love it when people say, oh, Judy would have done it that too. This is ridiculous. Give me the phone. What do you mean they said no? I hope that I carry her spirit of not taking no for an answer and speaking out for those who might not be in the room, but also demanding that we hold everybody around us to a higher standard. She taught me that, and I carry it with me all the time.
That's amazing. So you are moderating probably the largest disability gathering of CEOs called Sank 25 for the Valuable 500. Something that Judy would probably have loved to see, with people coming together and discussing disability for the first time. What do you think that she would say if she was there?
Judy was a big fan of what Caroline Casey, the founder of the Valuable 500, was doing. And because she thought it was really important that people with disabilities were in spaces outside of the choir, outside of the disability movement, as advocates themselves or as accountants, as architects, as musicians, as chefs, living our best lives, because she understood the power of representation and visibility. She would be delighted that Caroline and now Katie, who is the new CEO, have been able to garner the support of these 500 CEOs around the world who have made that commitment to disability inclusion also at the board level, because Judy understood that it took a village. Judy understood that as enormous as we are in numbers, people with disabilities being the largest identity group in the world that crosses or intersects with every other identity group, she knew very well from her own work in the civil rights movement that we see great change when allies join us. There's a wonderful definition that I'll paraphrase. I believe it's from the book White Fragility, but please forgive me or correct me if I'm wrong. It says that an ally is someone who, when we are being attacked, will stand in front of us. When we are leading, they will stand behind us. And when we need to show strength in numbers, they will stand beside us. In the civil rights movement, we saw huge change when allies stood beside those whose rights were being violated or those who didn't yet have rights. Same in the disability movement. When we see allies join us, those who are yet to become disabled, because it is a human universal experience that all of us will experience for some period of time in our lifetime, that's when we see real change. And Judy understood that, and that's why Judy would talk to everyone and anyone.
This organization is here to amplify the voices, talents, and innovations that already exist within this amazing community.
Mm-hmm.
But we are speaking to the allies too. We're speaking to friends, families, and caretakers of everybody in this world who knows somebody who is disabled. Or we can all, it takes the matter of a breath to become disabled in this world. And if we don't begin to design and anticipate our needs as a society, as a human race, get older, we're not going to be in a great position.
Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. I have learned so much. I cried. I'm always enamored by you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cara. Thank you for sharing it with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our audience. If you want more of our stories, please continue to listen and contribute. Thank you again. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.